and welcome to 3D Thursday. I'm Mac Attack, and let's jump into it. As promised, we're going to actually go through the process of putting the XTC-3D onto a variety of models, two basically that I have prepared with some sanding on them, and one that has absolutely no sanding on it. So to start off with, we're using aluminum foil to create our basic work surface on which we're going to do all of mixing and then painting and all that. Then we have our two mixing cups. These are paper cups, part A, part B. And then we have the actual material, the XTC-3D, part A, and then part B. A couple of foam brushes. Now, one of the things they say is that you're supposed to have a square mixing stick to mix up the elements. It's to get it down in the sides of the cup and get up the material. This is the one they sent. This will not do. So I have these basically coffee stir sticks that I have that have a square end on them. And so I'll be able to get them down in there on the sides and get the material thoroughly mixed. Before mixing, you're supposed to thoroughly shake part B. It is 42 parts of this to 100 parts of this. We're going to do this by weight. So we're going to use this digital scale, and we'll zero out the scale for the cups as we're mixing it all together. Whenever you have the opportunity, I always suggest to do it by weight rather than by volume. It just tends to work out far better. The other thing that we did is once we mix up the material, we're supposed to put it into a aluminum foil boat basically, and this will allow the material to spread out. The thicker the material is, the more likely it is to exotherm, which means gets hot. We want to avoid it getting really hot as much as possible, so we made our little aluminum foil boat. Turn it on, that on there, and that weighs 20. And then to zero it out, it's the ZT button. So at this juncture, we have 21 grams of part A and 9 grams of part B. So we'll go ahead and we'll pour the part B into the part A using our squared off stir stick to get as much out as possible. Alright, so now we're going to mix these two parts together. For approximately 1 minute, scraping along the sides, making sure to get as much of that material mixed in as possible. Now, once I've applied the material, the XTC-3D, to the models, I will go ahead and place them over in my spray booth and turn that on so that it's venting the fumes outside. So I think it's pretty well mixed up now. I'm going to pour it out. There you can see it. It's kind of a translucent off-white color when it's mixed up. We're supposed to really apply this very thin. They talk about a 1/64 inch thick coat, which in the grand scheme of things is very thin. So let's see if we can't get this. Now you're supposed to keep working it until it gets tacky. Now comes the hard part, because I didn't mount this on a handle. I have to basically set it down Well, that's not what I wanted to do. So, kind of come in at the top here. So, we'll go ahead, and this is one that has no pre-sanding on it, and I just used the dry brush to go back in. So, I'll need another dry brush, I think, for this. It's a little bit thicker than I was thinking it was going to be. What I imagined it to be. That's not necessarily a problem, it's just kind of an observation. So I would say that it has kind of the consistency of like warm honey. I'm going to make a prediction. On the pieces that I pre-sanded, I think that we'll end up with an excellent finish on. And on this piece that has no pre-sanding on it prior to the application of the XTC-3D, I think we're going to still see some of the striations. It may not be bad, but I definitely have my reservations about how well this stuff will do just by itself. Now, as I recall, it has a working time of 15 minutes. So you don't want to make up a whole bunch of this stuff unless you can apply it relatively quickly. So we're going to go in with a dry brush and just try to get some of that out of the bottom panels, because that is building up kind of thick in there. Well, her curves are much more conducive to applying this than the obelisk was. So there's that right off the bat. I should have put handles on these. I can see that now. Would have been a lot easier. And by handles, I mean like a wooden dowel with blue tack, or even you can do hot glue on the end of it and stick it to the bottom with something like this. And that way you have something nice to hold on to without getting your fingers all in this crud. So it's a good thing I am wearing my gloves. Wow, okay, I can already see a difference on the very first obelisk that we did. Okay, that's impressive. So basically I'm going to put all three brushes and the boat in there and just let it set up and cure, and then we'll just throw all of this away. Cheap brushes, I mean, they're less than like a nickel a piece, I think. That does it for this portion of it. We'll come back in a few hours and see how it turned out. Be right back. So, now that we've actually had a chance to let this set up, I can say that it does make a difference, even on the obelisk that we did not sand prior to applying the XTC. There's a noticeable difference, even though if you look closely at the pictures and stuff, you can't see a real difference, but when you run your finger across it, there is definitely one. Now, I still want to hit these with light sanding, probably like 400 plus grit, and then spray some primer on it. I'll be using Fusion primer, which is meant for plastic and sticks very well to it. I feel like because this is such a gloss coating that I really do need to break the surface up enough to give it something for the primer to stick to. The one thing that I have noted on these models is that by applying this It's very easy to build up, to get build up of the material so that it's kind of pooling in places where you really don't want it to. For that reason, I think I'm going to go ahead and shoot another video, but this time thinning the XTC-3D down. They do in the instructions say that you can thin it. So I'd like to try it as a thinner material and see how that works as opposed to the thicker material. I may even print out these two guys again, these two models again, just so that we can have something to compare apples to apples in the final product. I don't know whether or not I should show me thinning it down. Leave suggestions below in the comments if you want to see the whole process, or if you just want to basically see a comparison between non-thinned and then thinned XTC-3D application. And we'll kind of go from there. Overall, I have to say that I'm not disappointed with it. I think if I was to go over this 400 grit sandpaper, that I can knock down any imperfections that are still existing and really get a nice flat finish on it and ready for spray painting. So next time I'll go ahead and we'll redo this, but with the thinned down XTC-3D. Tomorrow we'll be going over additional progress that I've made, various scenery pieces. In addition to that, I'm going to actually go through the process of how I decoupage on these wall murals onto the central crypt for the Frostgrave cemetery table. That should be a lot of fun, and I hope that you'll join me tomorrow for that.